Welcome to today's deep dive, and may God bless your day and your entire week.
Thank you. And yeah, really excited for this one.
Today we're embarking on a truly fascinating journey into antiquity. We're doing a detailed exploration of just one single, incredibly rich ancient text.
Genesis chapter 18.
Exactly, Genesis 18. And to help us navigate the dense history and all those cultural nuances, we're pulling our insights from two heavyweight sources today.
Right, the Holman Study Bible and the NAA Study Bible.
Yeah, their commentary is basically going to act as our map through a narrative that is honestly way more complex than it might look at first glance.
It really is. I mean, on the surface, it reads like the simple historical encounter, right? Just a story of some travelers stopping by a tent.
Just grabbing a quick bite.
Exactly. But when you apply the historical and theological lenses from our sources, it reveals this profound cultural and, well, spiritual depth that still resonates.
Which brings us to our mission today. We're going to uncover those hidden layers. We'll explore the extreme, almost radical nature of Middle Eastern hospitality.
Which is wild to think about today.
Totally wild. Then we'll look at a shocking divine promise that completely defies human biology. And finally, we'll analyze what might literally be one of the most intense, high-stakes negotiations in human history.
The dramatic arc here is striking. You move from the quiet stillness of a mundane afternoon right into a sweeping cosmic bargaining session over thousands of lives.
Right. So let me set the scene for you, drawing directly from the sources. Picture the ancient Middle East. You have Abraham, who is an elderly patriarch at this point.
Very elderly.
Yeah, and he's sitting by the entrance of his tent near the oaks of Mamre. The text specifically notes the environment. It is the sweltering heat of the day.
That oppressive midday heat where the whole world just stops.
Nobody is traveling. The flocks are resting in the shade. The air is heavy. It's still. But then suddenly, Abraham looks up and sees three mysterious men standing right there.
Just out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere. And his reaction to these strangers is what kicks off this entire wild sequence of events.
What's fascinating here is the sheer physicality of Abraham's response to this unexpected intrusion.
Yeah.
To appreciate this, you have to remember his immense status. He is a wealthy, powerful leader of a massive nomadic encampment. And he's very old.
Right.
In that specific cultural context, men of his advanced age and high social standing simply do not run.
It's undignified.
Highly undignified. You don't hike up your robes and sprint. But the text explicitly notes that he ran from the tent door to meet them and then immediately bowed himself completely to the earth.
He literally drops to the dust. He just throws all of his patriarchal dignity right out the window.
Completely.
And then he offers them what sounds like a really casual, modest snack.
Yeah.
He says, let a little water be brought, wash your feet, and rest under the tree. I'll bring a piece of bread.
A piece of bread?
Yeah. It sounds like he's just offering them a glass of water and some crackers to hold them over until the next town.
Yeah.
But then he completely flips the script on what he actually delivers.
He promises a little to be polite, but he delivers an absolute feast. This is the epitome of the ancient Middle Eastern code of hospitality.
It's extreme.
It is. In a harsh, unforgiving desert environment, hospitality wasn't just good manners, it was a paramount mechanism for survival. The study notes highlight the staggering scale of what he actually prepares behind the scenes.
Oh, the scale is unbelievable.
He orders a choice, tender calf to be slaughtered and prepared immediately. He brings out curds and milk, which were rare delicacies.
The detail about the bread is what really blew my mind, though.
Oh, the flour.
Yes. I was reading through the Holman Study Bible notes, and it points out that Abraham tells his wife, Sarah, to use 3 measures of fine flour. I had to look up the conversion for that.
What?
3 measures translates to roughly 20 liters of flour.
Which is just an astronomical volume of food for 3 passing travelers.
It's a commercial bakery's worth of bread.
Yeah.
For 3 guys dropping by on a Tuesday afternoon.
Oh, right.
To put this in a modern context, imagine you're relaxing on your porch. Someone knocks on your door. And instead of just offering them a cup of coffee, you scramble your entire household.
Panic mode.
You clean the estate, slaughter a prized animal, and bake 50 loaves of bread. It's like scrambling to cook a Michelin-star meal because a world leader unexpectedly showed up in your driveway.
Well, the linguistic details in the original text actually give us a clue as to why he went to such extravagant lengths.
Oh, right, the Hebrew phrasing.
Exactly. The NAA Study Bible notes provide a really interesting insight into the Hebrew word Abraham uses to greet the leader of these 3 men.
Okay, lay it on us.
So, ancient Hebrew was originally written using only consonants. The vowels were added much later by scribes using little dots and marks. Scholars call that vowel pointing.
Right, so the pronunciation wasn't locked in originally.
Exactly. Depending on which vowels you assume belong to those original consonants, the word Abraham uses can be read in two very different ways. It could be vocalized as Adonai, which is a respectful but common term. It means my lord or sir, used for human superiors.
Like saying sir to a police officer.
Right. Or it could be vocalized as Adonai, which is the sacred divine title reserved strictly for God.
That built-in ambiguity is just brilliant. It leaves us wondering exactly what Abraham knew in that split second.
The Study Bible suggests this ambiguity is highly intentional. It implies that Abraham might have intuitively recognized that this wasn't just a regular visit from passing merchants.
Something tipped him off.
Something in their presence, or maybe a deep spiritual intuition. He sensed a divine manifestation.
And that perfectly explains the frantic reaction, the undignified running, the massive feast, bowing to the dirt.
Yes. He knew he was in the presence of something incredibly significant, even if he didn't fully comprehend it quite yet.
I want you, the listener, to just imagine being a guest, treated with this level of frantic, generous devotion. The text gives us this vivid visual. Abraham didn't sit down and eat the feast with them as an equal.
No, he stood.
He literally stood by them under the tree while they ate. He stood there in the midday heat like a waiter, watching over them in a posture of total servitude, ready to meet their every need.
It is the ultimate display of honor in that culture. And the meal serves as this perfect bridge, setting the stage for the narrative to transition from physical hospitality to the true, startling purpose of the visit.
Okay, let's unpack this. The meal finishes, the plates are clear, and the dynamic of the conversation suddenly shifts. The visitors turn to Abraham and ask a very specific, pointed question. They say, "Where is Sarah, your wife?"
And this question brings up another vital piece of cultural context from the Holman Bible notes. In traditional Asian and Middle Eastern nomadic cultures.
And we still see this today in some places, right?
Yes, a social dynamic you can still observe in some traditional cultures. A wife was generally not permitted to be present in the main living area when male guests were being hosted.
So she's out of sight, sequestered in the women's quarters of the tent.
But she is absolutely not out of earshot.
Not at all. The narrative tells us she's right there, listening closely through the thin fabric of the tent door behind Abraham. And it's through that thin fabric that she hears this mysterious visitor drop an absolute bombshell.
The promise.
The visitor confidently declares that he will return in exactly a year's time and Sarah will have a son.
To really grasp the sheer impossibility of this statement, you have to factor in the medical and biological reality of their situation.
It's medically impossible.
The Study Bible strongly emphasized that both Abraham and Sarah were extremely old, well advanced in years. The biblical text bluntly states that Sarah had passed the age of childbearing.
Her biological clock hadn't just stopped. It vanished decades ago. She had spent a lifetime carrying the social and personal weight of infertility.
A huge burden in that era.
So when she hears this promise casually tossed out by a visitor eating under a tree, her reaction is incredibly human and raw. She laughs.
But it's not a loud, scoffing laugh.
Right. She doesn't laugh so everyone hears. She laughs internally, to herself. Her internal monologue is essentially, "After I am worn out and my husband is old, will I now have this pleasure?"
It's a laugh born of sheer, exhausted incredulity. The psychological weight of years of barrenness, the undeniable physical reality of her aging body, the dashed hopes of her youth, all of it combines to make the promise sound completely absurd to her rational mind. She is essentially laughing at a dream that died a long time ago.
Wow.
But that private thought instantly leads to a divine confrontation.
The Lord immediately zeroes in on that secret internal laugh. He turns to Abraham and asks, "Why did Sarah laugh? Is anything too hard for the Lord?"
Caught.
Yeah, and Sarah, who realizes that her most private, guarded thoughts have just been broadcast aloud by this divine visitor, is suddenly terrified. In her panic, she actually lies.
A very natural defense mechanism.
She speaks up from behind the tent flap and says, "I didn't laugh." And he just gently replies, "No, but you did laugh."
The study notes synthesize this encounter beautifully. They point out how it highlights Sarah's profound relatability.
Oh, 100%.
Her skepticism in that moment perfectly mirrors our own human tendency to doubt when we're faced with seemingly impossible situations or insurmountable odds.
We look at our physical limitations, our historical track record of failure, the data right in front of us, and we laugh at the very idea of a miraculous change.
We've all had those moments of deep cynicism. Someone offers us hope, and our immediate internal reaction is, yeah, right, that's never going to happen for me.
Exactly.
And that is what makes God's response here so striking. He doesn't strike her down for her doubt. He doesn't punish her for lying in a moment of panic.
Which he easily could have in these ancient texts.
Right, but he responds with grace. It's a gentle rebuke, a correction of her limited perspective rather than a harsh retribution.
Is anything too hard for the Lord?
By posing that ultimate rhetorical question, he challenges Sarah, and by extension the reader, to fundamentally expand their understanding of what is possible when the divine intersects with human limitation.
It's a beautifully intimate human moment, but the narrative doesn't linger there because things are about to get incredibly dark and serious.
A major tonal shift.
Right after this exchange, the men get up to leave, and they look down from the highlands toward the cities of the plain, specifically Sodom and Gomorrah. And God begins this sort of internal monologue where he decides he's going to share his impending plans with Abraham.
The biblical text actually pauses to give us the specific why behind God's decision to reveal his intentions to a human being.
Which is rare.
Very rare. The notes explain that God chose Abraham to become a great and powerful nation with a specific, non-negotiable mandate. He must direct his children and his household after him to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is right and just.
So this isn't just the divine visitors sharing the latest regional gossip.
No, not at all.
This is a crucial, deliberate teaching moment for the patriarch. God is setting the stage to give Abraham a practical masterclass in divine justice.
Precisely. If Abraham is going to be the founding father of a nation characterized by righteousness and justice, he needs to thoroughly understand how the ultimate judge of all the earth operates in the face of deep societal corruption.
Which brings us to the infamous cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, located down in the valley near the Dead Sea. The Lord tells Abraham that the outcry against these cities is great and their sin is very grave. And I want to be very careful here.
Right.
We need to stick strictly to what our source notes say, impartially, because this is a famous historical text that carries a lot of heavy implications and assumptions in modern culture.
The study Bibles provide a very clear, nuanced analysis of the specific sins that triggered this divine investigation. They note that the outcry rising from the city indicates massive, systemic injustice. Yes. What is particularly illuminating is how the notes draw from broader biblical context to define this sin. Specifically referencing the prophet Ezekiel, chapter 16, the notes list the grave sins of Sodom as arrogance, gluttony, and a severe, callous neglect of the poor and needy.
That is a massive paradigm shift for a lot of people. The popular understanding usually focuses entirely on other aspects, but the notes make it clear that a primary catalyst for divine judgment was systemic economic injustice.
Exactly.
They completely ignored the vulnerable people suffering right in front of them while living in arrogant luxury.
It drastically reframes the narrative. Furthermore, the notes do describe immense wickedness and what they term unspeakable abominations.
Right.
They connect this terminology directly to the terrifying events detailed in the very next chapter, Genesis 19, which involves the attempted homosexual violation and brutal mob violence against the angelic visitors.
This is a very dark chapter.
It is the culmination of this deeply entrenched systemic cruelty, arrogance, and predatory wickedness that prompted the divine response.
And the way God investigates this response is a fascinating detail. The NAA study notes point out a crucial theological phrase. God says, "I will go down and see if what they have done is as bad as the outcry that has reached me."
That phrase, "go down and see," requires careful interpretation. It is not an indication that God possesses limited omniscience.
Like he's stuck up in heaven and needs a telescope.
Right, that he's somehow disconnected in heaven, unaware of the situation on the ground, and needs to take a physical road trip to gather intel.
He literally just read Sarah's deepest internal thoughts from across a tent. He obviously possesses total knowledge of what's happening in the valley.
The notes explain that this language is a classic anthropomorphism, which means describing God's actions using human terms and limitations.
Got it.
It is designed to demonstrate a vital judicial principle to Abraham and to the future nation he will build. It shows that divine judgment is never arbitrary, never impulsive, and never based on mere hearsay.
It's a legal process.
God acts as the perfect, impartial investigator and fair judge. He conducts a careful, deliberate examination of the evidence before a final verdict is rendered. It establishes the absolute fairness and unassailable justice of the judgment that is about to fall on the plain.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because Abraham hears this ominous declaration, and he immediately realizes the personal stakes. He knows his nephew, Lot, lives right in the center of Sodom.
A huge conflict of interest.
So Abraham steps directly into the path of this impending divine destruction. He approaches God to intercede.
This is a truly breathtaking moment in ancient literature. A mere human being steps up to respectfully challenge the creator of the universe on the mechanics of his justice.
It's unheard of.
Abraham poses a profound, enduring philosophical question. Will you sweep away the righteous with the wicked? And then he boldly holds God to his own standard. He says, will not the judge of all the earth do right?
It is an incredibly bold position to take. He is basically advocating for the nuance of justice.
It highlights the ultimate theological tension, the delicate balance between absolute, uncompromising justice against evil and boundless protective mercy for the innocent.
Yeah.
Abraham is formulating a legal argument. He asserts that a truly just God cannot possibly treat the innocent and the guilty with the same broad brush of catastrophic destruction.
And so begins the haggling. It reads like watching a high-stakes negotiation in a Middle Eastern bazaar, but the currency on the table is human lives.
Literally bargaining for lives.
Abraham starts at a solid number, 50. He asks, what if there are 50 righteous people in the city? Will you really sweep it away and not spare the place for the sake of the 50 righteous people in it? And God immediately, without hesitation, responds, if I find 50, I will spare the whole place for their sake.
The absolute ease with which God agrees seems to give Abraham the necessary courage to push the boundary even further.
He definitely pushes the envelope. He goes from 50 down to 45, then he asks about 40, then 30, then 20. And finally, he whittles the number all the way down to just 10 righteous people. It's this incredible, tense back-and-forth dialogue.
Notice Abraham's specific posture throughout this entire negotiation, though. The study notes emphasize his incredible humility mixed with audacious persistence.
It's quite the combo.
At one point in the bargaining, he says, now that I have been so bold as to speak to the Lord, though I am nothing but dust and ashes.
Wow.
He is acutely aware of his own mortality and insignificance before the divine. Yet he is driven by a desperate, compassionate concern for his nephew Lot and a deep theological desire to see God's righteous character vindicated. That combination refuses to let him back down.
He's literally saying, I know I am just dirt speaking to the divine, but please don't get angry. What if there are only 20? What if there are only 10?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the most revealing part of this entire exchange is not actually Abraham's persistence. It is God's continuous, unbroken concession.
He never says no.
Every single time Abraham lowers the number, God agrees instantly. He never loses his patience. He never reprimands Abraham for his boldness. He never tells him to stop bargaining.
It is stunning when you realize what is being agreed to. God is willing to spare an entire, incredibly wicked, violent, oppressive city for the sake of finding just 10 good people.
It reveals a profound foundational truth about the character of God as presented in these texts. The notes point out that God is shown to be far more eager to show mercy than to execute destruction.
That's a powerful takeaway.
His immediate willingness to pardon a multitude of the wicked for the sake of a tiny righteous minority speaks volumes about the immense value he places on righteousness.
So what does this all mean for you? We've journeyed from an old man frantically baking bread under a tree in the midday heat to a woman laughing at an impossible future, and finally to a lone human debating the destruction of a city with the Creator. But it is incredibly relevant to our modern lives.
This deep dive is really an invitation to consider how you operate in the world. How do you advocate for others? When you look at the complex, often corrupt world around us, how do you balance the strict demand for justice with the deep human need for mercy? Abraham shows us exactly what it looks like to literally stand in the gap, to risk your own comfort, and to use whatever voice you have to intercede for people who are facing absolute disaster.
And it leaves us with a truly haunting, provocative thought to mull over as we close.
Let's hear it.
The chapter ends very abruptly. God departs as soon as he finishes speaking, and Abraham turns and walks home. The negotiation is completely over. But the text leaves us with a fascinating implication that it never explicitly answers. Abraham voluntarily stopped at 10.
He just stopped.
Why did he stop there? Did he simply lose his nerve and feel he had pushed the divine patience as far as it could possibly go? Or was he absolutely foolishly certain that there were surely at least 10 good people in his nephew's extended family?
It's a terrifying gamble.
It forces us to ask a difficult question of ourselves. When we advocate for others in our own lives, do we stop short because we hit the limits of our own courage, or because we fundamentally overestimate the goodness of the world around us? What is the true stabilizing power of a tiny, righteous minority?
That is a powerful question to leave hanging in the air. A huge thank you to the Holman Study Bible and the NAA Study Bible for the incredible historical and theological insights that guided our map today. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. May God bless all listeners.